Hey guys, welcome back to Spiker Storytime again. I'm pretty excited about this one. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. What we're going to read today is an excerpt from the Odyssey. The Odyssey is a Greek epic poem, and epic poetry is kind of a big deal. It's worth learning about because so many of the things that we like today are kind of based on the structure that's established in epic poetry. An epic poem is a really long story about something that happened a really long time ago. And usually you have this hero who is like usually your epic hero is going to be like this really strong, really smart guy who can outsmart and outfight everything. And he interacts with the gods, and he has all these crazy supernatural adventures. And the scale of these stories is usually really huge. It's not uncommon for your epic hero to like dive into hell to save people, or to talk to the gods directly about whatever it is they're trying to do. They're really special guys. The reason that they're poems is because when they were really popular, this was before people had books to read even. So you would have a guy who had memorized the entire thing, and then, he sits around the fire with a bunch of people and would tell this story, and it would be a big event, and that would be how everybody got their entertainment. And the fact that it's a poem makes it easier to memorize. So that's why it's in a poem. Usually there is a lot of really weird language in these things because they're really old. It's been translated from, ancient Greek into, 3 or 4 other languages, and then finally into English. Your epic hero, in addition to being like a Superman, is usually going to have some kind of a tragic flaw. So there's going to be something about his personality that's always getting him into trouble. And with the story that we're going to read, the Odyssey, our epic hero, who is named Odysseus, has a tragic flaw of hubris. And hubris means that he is overconfident. He thinks that he's too strong and too smart for any of his fights to go badly for him, so he just charges into things without really thinking too hard about what might happen. And of course, it wouldn't be a tragic flaw if it never came back to bite him, so it does, and we'll read a little bit about that too. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read the same story that you should have in Microsoft Sway in front of you, and I'm going to stop and explain some things and talk about it, and there are going to be questions, so we'll go over the questions and talk about them when they come up. So here we go. The Odyssey is an epic from ancient Greece. It tells of the adventures of the hero Odysseus. In this excerpt, Odysseus describes his meeting with the giant one-eyed monster named Polyphemus. Polyphemus is one of the Cyclopes, and he is also the son of Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, and Poseidon is also a huge jerk. Odysseus's curiosity and hubris, or extreme arrogance, lead him to the Cyclops' empty cave. They also lead him to wait for the monster to come home. When his dudes are like, "Hey, Odysseus, we should get out of here," he's like, "Nah, we're going to stay. This is going to be great." It's not great. The first question that we have is define hubris. I just talked about it, so we can go back and play that again. And hubris means that he is overconfident. He thinks that he's too strong and too smart for any of his fights to go badly for him. And now that we've done that, you can write down what hubris means. Alright, here's the actual poem. In the next land we found were Cyclopes, giants, louts, without a law to bless them. In ignorance, leaving the fruitage of the earth in mystery to the immortal gods, they neither plough nor sow by hand, nor till the ground, though grain wild wheat and barley grows untended, and wine grapes in clusters ripen in haven's rain. So they're giants, they're louts, which means they're lazy, they lay around. They don't plow or sow by hand, which means they don't plant anything, they don't farm. Even though they have wheat and barley growing wild, and they have wine grapes that just grow wild. Cyclopes have no muster and no meeting, No consultation or old tribal ways, but each one dwells in his own mountain cave, dealing out rough justice to wife and child, indifferent to what the others do. Which means they never get together and meet, they don't have any rules, they don't have any laws. They point out specifically that they beat their wives and their children, and that they don't care what the other Cyclopes are doing. They just do their own thing. We've got 2 more questions now. Number 2, in the first passage, Odysseus lists at least 4 reasons he dislikes the Cyclopes. Identify at least 2 of them. Well, go back and listen to that again. I listed a few things there, and just take for granted that everything that's listed there, Odysseus does not like those things about the Cyclopes. This is all very negative when he's pointing it out. And that leads into question 2a, which says, what does Odysseus's list tell you about the kind of society admired by the ancient Greeks? If everything that Odysseus listed was a negative, then the opposite of that is going to be what Odysseus wants a society to have, right? So think about what he says about the Cyclopes and try to figure out what the opposite would be. And you might be pretty close to what the ancient Greeks would have wanted a society to be like. So here's a summary of the next part. Across the bay from the land of the Cyclopes was a lush deserted island. Odysseus and his crew landed on the island in a dense fog, and spent days feasting on wine and wild goats and observing the mainland where the Cyclopes lived. On the 3rd day, Odysseus and his company of men set out to learn if the Cyclopes were friends or foes. So they spend some time watching these guys, and then they're like, oh, let's go check them out. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose came in the east, I called my men together and made a speech to them. We're going to stop again because now we have to talk about epithets, which is another hallmark of an epic poem. An epithet is a short, repeated phrase used to describe particular people or things. One of Homer's most famous epithets describes a sunrise. Reread the previous passage and write down the epithet. Homer, of course, being the guy that wrote or thought up the Odyssey. When the young dawn, with fingertips of rose, came in the east, I called my men together and made a speech to them. So he's describing the dawn using personification, as though it was a person, saying that it has fingertips of rose. That's the epithet. Old shipmates, friends, the rest of you, stand by. I'll make the crossing in my own ship with my own company, and find out what the mainland natives are, for they may be wild savages and lawless, or hospitable and God-fearing men. At this I went aboard and gave the word to cast off the stern. My oarsmen followed, filing in their benches by the rowlocks, and all in line dipped oars in the grey sea. As we rowed on, and nearer to the mainland, at one end of the bay we saw a cavern yawning above the water, screened with laurel, and many rams and goats about the place inside a sheepfold made from slabs of stone, earth-fast between tall trunks of pine and rugged, towering oak trees. So they're headed over there in their own boat, and they see that there's a sort of a pen made out of stones and trees that has a whole bunch of sheep and goats in it, and they can see a cave that's got some vines hanging in front of it. In other words, Odysseus tells his men that he and a small group will explore the island. His shipmates launch a boat, and they row toward the island. As they get close, they see a cave with many sheep and goats nearby. A prodigious man slept in this cave alone, and took his flocks to graze afield, remote from all companions, knowing none by savage ways, a brute so huge, he seemed no man at all of those who eat good wheaten bread, but he seemed rather a shaggy mountain, reared in solitude. So they see the Cyclops, and he's huge and hairy, and he goes away from the rest of the Cyclopes and leads his little sheepies off to go graze in the fields. All right, reread the previous passage. Identify the imagery that helps you visualize or see the Cyclops. In your own words, briefly describe how you picture the Cyclops. So if we go back, he's described as a prodigious man. Prodigious means really big. Remote from all companions, a brute, huge, savage. He doesn't eat good wheaten bread, but he's a shaggy mountain reared in solitude. So write down what you think the Cyclops looks like based on that description. We beached there, and I told the crew to stand by and keep watch over the ship. As for myself, I took my 12 best fighters and went ahead. I had a goat skin full of that sweet liquor that Euphanes' son, Maron, had given me. He kept Apollo's holy grove at Ismarus. For kindness we showed him there, and showed his wife and child. He gave me 7 shining golden talents, perfectly formed, a solid silver wine bowl, and then this liquor, 12 two-handled jars of brandy, pure and fiery. Not a slave in Maron's household knew this drink. Only he, his wife, and the storeroom mistress knew. And they would put 1 cupful, ruby-colored, honey-smooth, in 20 more of water, but still the sweet scent hovered like a fume over the wine bowl. No man turned away when cups of this came around. So they park their boat, and they take a goat skin, so like a water bottle, basically, full of this really, really good wine, this incredibly good wine that's so strong that they have to dilute it with 20 cups of water, 1 cup of this wine to 20 cups of water, and it's still really, really good wine. So that means it's really, really strong, right? And they also take 7 bars of gold or silver. That's what talents means. And they go check out this Cyclops cave. He takes 12 of his best men to explore the cave. They bring along a goatskin container of wine that Odysseus had received as a gift. Okay, so how do we know that wine is valuable? That's going to be question 5. Summarize how valuable people think the wine is. If we reread that, not a slave in Maron's household knew this drink. So the slaves don't even know it's there. Only he, his wife, and the storeroom mistress knew. They would put 1 cupful ruby-colored honey smooth and 20 more of water, but still the sweet scent hovered like a fume over the wine bowl. No man turned away when cups of this came around. How do we know it's valuable? A wineskin full I brought along, and victuals in a bag. For in my bones I knew some towering brute would be upon us soon, all outward power, a wild man, ignorant of civility. We climbed then briskly to the cave, but Cyclops had gone afield to pasture his fat sheep, so we looked round at everything inside. A drying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids, each in its class, firstlings apart from middlings, and the dewdrops of newborn lambskins penned apart from both. And vessels full of whey were brimming there, bowls of earthenware and pails for milking. My men came pressing round me, pleading, "Why not take these cheeses, get them stowed, come back, throw open the pens, and make a run for it? We'll drive the kids and lambs aboard. We say put out again on good salt water." So, in other words, Odysseus and his men find the Cyclops gone. They investigate his sheep, his cave, and his food. Odysseus's men want to raid the cave and get back to the ship before Cyclops returns. And we have a definition here for whey. Whey is the watery part of milk. During the making of cheese, whey separates from the solid part of the milk, which is the curds. And good salt water, which they refer to as the open sea. When they get to the Cyclops cave, they see that there's a bunch of sheep there, like little baby sheep and goats. There's a bunch of cheese there that the Cyclops had been making, I guess, from the goat milk. And Odysseus's men are all like, "Hey, let's steal this cheese and let's steal all these goats and get them on our boat and get out of here before the Cyclops comes back, because, you know, he's a pretty big dude and he looks kind of rough. Like, let's get out of here." Ah, how sound that was! Yet I refused. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. No pretty sight it turned out for my friends. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, and took some cheese to eat, then sat in silence. So Odysseus is like, "No, I want to see this guy, so we're going to stay." So they eat some of his cheese, They burnt an offering, which means they burnt some of the food that they were eating as like an offering to the gods, right? When you burned something valuable, some of your food or something like that, as an offering to the gods, you're hoping that the gods will treat you well because you're giving up some of what you have for them. So, number 6. Odysseus's men try to convince him to grab the Cyclops' food, drink, and livestock, then leave. Identify the reason Odysseus decides to stay in the cave and explain what Odysseus's decision shows about his character. So, why does Odysseus want to stay and meet the Cyclops? And what does that say about Odysseus as a person? We lit a fire, burnt an offering, and took some cheese to eat, then sat in silence around the embers, waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. Then over the broad cavern floor he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and the he-goats in the yard outside, and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. 24 four-wheeled wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred the tonnage of that rock from where he wedged it over the door-sill. Next he took his seat and milked his bleating ewes. A practice job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling. Thickened his milk then into curds and whey, sieved out of the curds to drip in withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls cooling until he drank it for his supper. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare he saw us. So, Odysseus refuses to leave. He wants to see the monster. When the Cyclops returns, he moves a huge stone over the opening of the cave, sealing it shut, and Odysseus makes it very clear that nobody but the Cyclops is going to be able to move this rock. Then he milks his goats and begins to make his cheese, and then he notices the visitors when the fire flares up. "Strangers," he said, "who are you and where from? What brings you here by seaways? A fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea?" Fair traffic being honest trading. Here's question number 7. Cyclops asks the men 4 questions. Why might he be so worried about strangers? He wants to know, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? Or, are you wandering rogues? In other words, are you pirates? Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? And are you pirates? Those are basically the 4 questions that the Cyclops asks them. Why do you think the Cyclops would be so worried about strangers? We felt a pressure in our hearts, in dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. But all the same I spoke up in reply. We are from Troy, Achaeans, blown off course by the shifting gales on the great South Sea, homeward bound, but taking routes and ways uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus. The whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. It was our luck to come here where we stand, beholden for your help or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the god's courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. So it was a sacred Greek custom to honor strangers with food and gifts, and Odysseus reminds the Cyclops that Zeus will punish anyone who mistreats a guest. What he's saying here is, we are from Troy, we are Achaeans, which is actually a lie. He doesn't tell the Cyclops honestly where he's from, and that they're on their way home, which is true, but not to Troy. And they refer back to the Trojan War, right, where they're talking about cities that were destroyed. And then, we need food, and Zeus will be mean to you if you're not nice to us. It's basically what he says. That brings us to question number 8. Odysseus is telling the story of how the men arrived on the island. Listeners would have known about the war in Troy and King Agamemnon's victory for the Greeks. What is Odysseus trying to tell the Cyclops about his men and their accomplishments? In other words, when he's telling the Cyclops that they served under Agamemnon, and that Agamemnon was just the victor in a really big war, what is he trying to tell the Cyclops there? What hint is there to get from reading between the lines? He answered from his brute chest, unmoved, "You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere, telling me, mind the gods. We Cyclopes care not a whistle for your thundering Zeus, or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. I would not let you go for fear of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Tell me, where was it now that you left your ship? Around the point, or down the shore, I wonder?" So the Cyclops' response to this is, "You're a ninny," which is another way of saying, "You're an idiot. We don't care about the gods, we don't care about you, and I'm not going to let you go unless I feel like it." He's not afraid of Zeus, he thinks he's stronger than Zeus. And then he says, "Hey, why don't you tell me where you left your boat?" So the Cyclops is pretty clear about the fact that he's not going to be friendly or kind, and that he doesn't really care if the gods don't like people who aren't nice to guests. He's going to do what he wants. And that's where we leave part 1. So next we'll see what the Cyclops does, and then we're going to see what Odysseus does to get back at the Cyclops for that. So look forward to it. You should have 8 questions answered by now. And that's all for this video.
Odysseus and his crew are on board his ship, headed home on a long voyage after the Trojan War. They have had many adventures.
Oh, swab the poop deck. Swab, swab, swab.
Ew.
Good morning, crew.
Good morning.
Hey, remember those lotus eaters, huh?
Yeah, half our crew is still tied up below deck.
And those Siconians, huh?
You mean those guys that killed like 18 of our guys, so I had to work double shifts because the old boatswain who had his throat slit in his sleep? Yeah, I remember.
We sure are the bestest heroes ever, aren't we?
Well, you sure are, Odysseus. The rest of us seem to be kind of, expendable.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, look! Land! I see an island over there.
We are a little low on food. Maybe we should go check it out.
Are you sure, boss? What if there's like monsters or spies or evil snakes or killer bees or harpies or gorgons or rotten potatoes or...
We are mighty men. Man the lifeboat. You, come with me. We're going to take the super fancy wine in case we meet somebody and need a gift. One moment, please. Aha! There we go. Everybody else, hang tight. We shall return victorious. I don't see much going on here.
I don't know. Look at that guy over there!
Yeah, look at me. I'm such a bad dude. Look at me. Yeah, I beat my wife. I beat my kids. I like to eat people. It's so good, such a good life, being such a bad dude. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go find some public property to vandalize before I head home for the evening. Yeah, here we go.
That guy doesn't look very friendly. Maybe we should just round up some of these wild goats and other foodstuffs and head out before he notices us?
What ho, a cave! Onward, my loyal crew. Let's go check it out.
Dude, No, we literally just saw a monster.
We're heroes, men. Nothing can stop us. Ah!
I can see where this is going.
This place is nuts. Look at all this stuff.
Look at that huge straw bed. I bet that one-eyed giant lives here.
Look at all those sheep and all that cheese. I'm starving because we haven't eaten anything for like a week, because traveling on a boat on the ocean during an epic poem is pretty rough going.
Hey, boss, here's an idea. Let's steal the cheese, steal the sheep, and get out of here before that blue guy comes back.
Nah, let's stay. Maybe he's a cool dude. We can shoot the breeze and make friends before we hit the road. I wonder if he has an Xbox in here.
This never works out, Odysseus. Are you sure?
Nothing's ever going to happen to us. We are mighty Greek heroes.
Odysseus and his men waited in the cave for several hours.
I spy with my little eye something gray and furry.
It's a sheep.
You win again. I'm really impressed.
There's nothing in here but some sheep, some straw, that one really big log, a giant boulder, some poop, and some cheese. Not a whole lot of options.
Quick, everybody hide. Over there.
I thought you wanted to try and make friends.
All right, little sheepies. Time to get some dinner and time to, do your milking, and let's just shut this door here. All right, get my big rock. Yeah. There we go. Now my sheepies can get out. Let's take care of you. Hey there, little dude. Are you lost, or a pirate, or like a vacuum cleaner salesman, or something? Are you selling cookies? Like, what do you want?
Okay, we're mighty Greek heroes, but we're from, Chicago.
Yeah? And?
We're on our way back to Chicago, but we stopped by since it's a long trip. We thought we'd chill here for a bit, which should be fine, since Zeus punishes people who aren't nice to guests. You might be hit by a lightning bolt or something if you're mean to us.
I don't give a hoot about Zeus, or about you, or about anything. And you're trapped in my cave because I put a big rock in front of the entrance, so you can't get out now. I'm so mean and nasty, and I like to eat people. Tell me, whatever your name is, where'd you leave your boat? I bet you got a boat somewhere that you left, and it's got like lots of nice, juicy, tasty dudes in it, and I want to eat them. So, tell me where they are.
Well, shucks.
I'm so evil. That was great.